Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of the HBO series IT Welcome to Derry, Episode 1, The Pilot, which has a shockingly violent ending that befits the horrific history of Derry, Maine, as it was established by Andy and Barbara Muschietti's two IT films from 2017 and 2019. In this video, I'm going to break down all of the Easter eggs and references to things like the broader Stephen King universe of stories, and even some DC clues that might tell us the plan for the DC Universe Batman movie. Didn't think I'd get that in this show. Also, New Rockstars has spun off a new channel for horror video essays called The Witching Hour. We still want to do Easter egg videos like these for current horror big releases here on the main channel, but if you want to go deeper into classic horror with video essays that don't focus too much on like Batman Easter eggs, subscribe to The Witching Hour. Tomorrow will be Gina Ippolito's video essay about Friday the 13th, and next week you'll be able to see my video essay about the 1978 Halloween. Episode 1 of IT Welcome to Derry opens on black as we hear the lyrics from the 1962 film The Music Man as the people of River City chant "Trouble, trouble, trouble, trouble." The Music Man was originally a 1957 stage show, and Trouble is one of the most iconic numbers from that show. Professor Harold Hill has come to town as a con man in the year 1912 with a promise to build a marching band of youths, getting them uniforms and instruments with a plan really to rip them off. And the guy doesn't know a thing about music himself, which is why he needs Marion the Librarian. This is a number where he whips everyone in the town into a frenzy over the town's youths being seduced by a billiards pool hall. You may remember Conan O'Brien parodying this in the Emmys one year. It was awesome. But using this 1962 film is an effective device for this episode, as just the townspeople chanting "Trouble" serves as a creepy reflection of the way the people of Derry, Maine are prone to that kind of mob mentality, manipulated by a red and white clad outsider who comes to town planning to manipulate them. In this story, that is pretty much what Pennywise is, and in stories like this, it's the kids who are always the losers. We see Robert Preston as Harold Hill in that 1962 film, warning the mothers of River City to heed the signs of corruption in their children. Appropriately, the final scene of this episode will be a corrupted mutant baby coming out of this very screen. It's January 4th, 1962, and we're in the Capitol Theater of Derry, Maine. We saw the Capitol Theater in the IT films when in 1989 it was showing movies like Batman. Stephen King's IT novel sets its past timeline events in 1957 and 1958. The 1990 films on ABC set them in 1960, but here in the altered Muschietti film timeline, the past events were in 1988 to 1989, and the town of Derry has been afflicted by some horrific tragedy every 27 years. That was actually Pennywise, aka the entity, feeding on the residents' fears and hatred and their pain, coming back every 27 years. There was the Ironworks explosion in 1908, the Bradley Gang incident in 1935, the Black Spot fire in 1962. That's going to be addressed on this season, and we have learned that future seasons of the show will go back 27 years in time to those previous eras. So season 2 will be in 1935, season 3 will be in 1908. As the camera moves over the audience in this theater, one girl gets necked as she blows a bubble that pops. I think in any IT title, something that inflates like this is definitely meant to make us paranoid. Matty Clemons is sucking on his pacifier, has a nervous tick, I assume some kind of red flag sign of the abuse he's suffering from his father at home. This poor kid's face is covered in bruises. As is the case in the history of Derry, young victims of domestic abuse and violent bullying are the most likely to be victimized by Pennywise because they have the most trauma. An usher chases Matty out of the theater, and Matty hides behind this standee for the 1962 Geronimo film starring Chuck Connors. Actually, Joshua Odchick will be playing a Native American character in future episodes of this series, and we do see a bit of this actor in the Coming Up on This Season trailer, along with some signs that we're going to see perhaps a ritual of Chud in this season. Ronnie works concessions, sucking two suckers at the same time. She sends the usher the wrong way with her father Hank, the projectionist, quizzing her on movie history. Maddie hitchhikes past the Welcome to Derry billboard, celebrating it being the birthplace of Paul Bunyan. The Paul Bunyan statue was a major set piece in the later IT stories, as it was a source of terror for Stephen King when he saw the Paul Bunyan statue in his hometown of Bangor. The billboard also has a sign for the Grand Dames of Derry and the Legion of White Decency. So the Legion of White Decency is a hate group in the novel in the town of Derry who is really responsible for the burning down of the Black Spot. But they weren't alone there. Pennywise was there too, but they're really ones that started the fire, even though Pennywise was always burning since the world's been turning. A family picks the kid up, claiming to be on their way to Portland. The radio newscaster talks about nuclear tests in the Soviet Union and how the kind of radiation emitted poses a global risk, from cancer to genetic mutations causing birth defects. The son of this family, Ray, spells words that come up starting with Willie's.
Willie's. W-I-L. Ray. L-I-E-S.
That's right.
Aha, lie. You'll notice the last 4 letters there are L-I-E-S, lies. Maddie notes that something's not right with this family. Arlene pulls out a container of raw liver, as one does, and dips her fingers in it and then puts them in Maddie's face. As a big fan of Vince Gilligan and the X-Files, I was reminded of a character from an episode of the X-Files, Eugene Toombs, who kills in 30-year cycles, similar to how Pennywise kills in 27-year cycles, and Eugene Toombs eats his victims' livers. I don't know if this was an intentional reference though, because, you know, it's not a Stephen King reference, but in Rosemary's Baby, she also eats raw liver and other raw organs. This is interrupted by Ray struggling to spell trouble, the word that was chanted in The Music Man. The mother calls her daughter Arlene a harlot and mentions the dad got a vasectomy, and then starts to spell the word necrosis, which I think could be a reference to the twin that died in this mutated womb, and then to spell things like kidnapping, and then maggots, and then cadaver, and then strangulation, because this is how Pennywise's sense of humor works. He wants to upset you and make you uncomfortable. Maddie wants out of this car and jerks the wheel, so he bumps the mom's womb. Everyone starts to chant O-U-T, and Maddie looks over at Ray to see his eyes are cockeyed. The iconic expression Pennywise makes, the unique talent that Bill Skarsgård could do without CGI. And I can't really show you what happens next, but since Pennywise will often take real fears and twist them into the most grotesque physical forms, the way they were just listening to the radiation-caused birth defects over the radio, a mutant baby gets birthed out and attacks Maddie. Andy Muschietti hilariously broke down this thing's design in the Inside the Episode segment on HBO, and this baby has a dead twin fused to its chest, no eyes in the main head, and just one wing. But I love that the dead twin head does have eyes, so maybe this whole thing sees out of those eyes. The family laughs maniacally as the mom lassos this thing around by its umbilical cord, but then they suddenly stop laughing when it turns to face Maddie, who tries to block it all out with his pacifier. And as the car goes over the bridge in downtown Derry, the baby attacks, because anytime you try to leave Derry, once Pennywise sets its sights on you, there's no way out of this town. You'll always be coming back to it. Poor Maddie's pacifier goes flying out of the window into the river below, where it floats into the sewer system toward a light. I'm thinking it might be the deadlights of the entity, and we see the words "it" followed by "Welcome to Derry" rising out of the dark water, just like the title did out of the sewer water in the 2017 film. 4 months later, we're in April 1962. A C-133 is spotted by Phil Malkin, who has been tracking B-52 jets and other planes transporting to the nearby U.S. Air Force Base. He's on the Derry Standpipe, a key location in the town of Derry from Stephen King's novel, and it didn't really show up in the 2017 or 2019 films, so I'm glad it shows up here. This water tower is based on one in King's hometown of Bangor, which, like the Paul Bunyan statue, gave King nightmares. Basically, King was terrified by everything in his hometown. And if I'm saying Bangor wrong, I've just been corrected too many times. If I've said I used to say banger, way off on that, but I've also said Bangor or Bangor, and no matter what, I'm just gonna say it wrong. Be nice to me, okay? I'm trying. We meet Major Leroy Hanlon. This first episode is called The Pilot, as in the first episode of any show is really referred to as a pilot, but Leroy is also the titular pilot of this episode, which is also a bit of wordplay that we saw on the pilot of Lost, because that was also centered around the search for a pilot. Leroy and Captain Polly Russo talk about there being no decent nightclubs or Chinese restaurants in Derry. There is the Black Spot nightclub. There's also the Jade of the Orient Chinese restaurant that we see the adult losers in It Chapter 2. And we actually see Jade of the Orient show up on a sign in this episode. Leroy Hanlon is the grandfather of Mike Hanlon, the future member of the Losers Club. We actually saw an older version of Leroy scolding Mike in the 2017 It film. And we don't notice him at first, but the driver of this car is actor Chris Chalk from HBO series like The Newsroom and Perry Mason, and he's already confirmed to be playing Dick Halloran. Yes, the Dick Halloran from The Shining, who first tells Danny about the shine and has those abilities himself. You can actually see Halloran handwritten on his name tag on his uniform in a lot of shots. So whenever Dick shine-eyes Leroy, since we know from The Shining that everyone with the shine can see it on each other, it's probably a sign that the reason Major Halloran miraculously survived that mission in Korea was because he has some of that shine too. In Dick Halloran's backstory in Stephen King's written material, he was a cook who was present at the Black Spot nightclub fire, and he actually uses his shine to save a lot of people. And it was that shine that also allowed Dick Halloran to see Pennywise's true evil form and made it so that no way in hell that guy was ever going back to Derry. So I love that we're seeing that on this show. Colonel Fuller explains how Derry Air Force Base is the northernmost base in the continental US, making it the closest to Soviet airspace on the other side of that Arctic Circle. They speculate whether the nuclear shit will hit the fan. And hey, since the show is currently in April 1962, we're only like 6 months away from October 1962, which is when the Cuban Missile Crisis occurs. So maybe we'll be working our way toward that. They pass the Special Projects building. That's obviously going to be a source of mystery for upcoming episodes in this subplot, but I'm wondering if this base could become home to the facility where Project Arrowhead investigates the transdimensional portals in Stephen King's The Mist. The idea of a government agency exploring these type of things also gets explored in Dreamcatcher and Firestarter. Hey, maybe they're all connected, and this special project will turn into The Shop, which is the agency behind the events of all of those things. I just think The Mist is going to be involved because there is a shot in the season trailer that shows some deliberative mist spreading through Derry. We move on to Derry High School, where a sign says, "Bert the Turtle says duck and cover." And inside, we're gonna see a kid dressed as Bert handing out flyers, getting bullied. Bert the Turtle was the animated mascot of various 1950s government PSAs that advised kids to duck and cover in the event of a bombing, even though that wouldn't help them at all when it comes to the power of a nuclear bomb. But the idea was he's a turtle. He could duck and cover inside of his shell. So you should do the same under your desk as you turn into an ashy skeleton. But really, all of the turtle references are a reference to Maturin the Turtle, the cosmic benevolent entity, the opposite to what it is. He created our universe and carries all of existence upon the back of his giant shell. He's the overarching protagonist in the Dark Tower series, and he actually does come up in 11/22/63. Also, by the way, in the 11/22/63 book, Jake Epping actually visits Derry in 1958 to prevent the murder of the Dunham family, and there he runs into Richie and Bev right after they defeated Pennywise. Now, that was left out of the James Franco Hulu series of 11/22/63, but hey, since we're now in a different timeline and we're like a year and a half before JFK would be assassinated, I think it'd be fun if a time-traveling Jake Epping could have passed through town on this series. Now, by this high school sign, we see a girl blowing a bubblegum bubble, and her friend pops it. I think there's gonna be something to these bubbles and the red balloons. I know it. Next, we meet our protagonist, Lily Bainbridge, played by Clara Stack. Everyone stares at her, and the sounds of slamming lockers intensify. I'm sure the sounds of the machinery that crushed her father echoing through her brain, setting her up to open her locker to find a jar of pickles tumbling out and shattering at her feet. And considering the urban legend is that her dad ended up in pieces in all of the pickle jars in the area, they're basically saying, "Hey, Loony Lily, here's some chunks of your dad splashing on your shoes." Matilda Lawler plays Lily's friend Marge. She played young Kirsten on HBO's Station 11, a show that makes me cry just thinking about it. Phil tells Teddy about his theories that since they're in the atomic age, that has caused aliens from other planets to come to Earth to deal with this new threat. Now, since the entity known as Pennywise is really a cosmic evil that came to Earth from someplace else, in a way, Phil is onto something. Actually, in the book The Tommyknockers, Stephen King basically establishes that it was a prisoner on the Tommyknockers spaceship and had escaped that caused the ship to crash to Earth. So Teddy is Theodore Uris from the same Uris family as Stanley Uris in It. It seems like his older brother must be Donald Uris, Stan's father, who in the Muschietti film becomes Rabbi Uris, whom we meet in the first film. So basically, Teddy is Stan's uncle. You'll notice that Teddy's locker reads, "Teddy urine sucks balls," and there's a drawing of Teddy dead as a giant pair of scissors cuts off part of him, which I assume is an anti-Semitic comment about the bris that this kid probably got. But either way, the fact that we see him dead here sets up that Teddy will die at the end of this episode. It's spooky season! Quick, think of something terrifying. You know, like a deranged clown that lives in your closet, or a scarecrow that comes alive at night to steal your dogs, or paying for a streaming service and not being able to access a ton of content simply because of where you live. There's not much to be done about clowns or corn crows, but if that third thing sends a shiver down your spine, ExpressVPN can help. ExpressVPN lets you change your online location with a single click of a button, granting you access to tons of content not normally available in your country. There are over 100 countries you can choose to appear from, so you can unlock thousands of new titles with ease. ExpressVPN works on your phone, laptop, even smart TVs, so you can watch your shows from the comfort of your couch or on the go, and it's super fast, so there's zero buffering. I use ExpressVPN all the time, whether I'm doing research for new Rockstars or just trying to get the most value out of my streaming subscriptions. For instance, if you have Netflix, you might think Rick and Morty just isn't available to you. Well, it's not available in the US, but you can use ExpressVPN to tell Netflix you are in the UK, like some kind of personal portal gun. ExpressVPN is my go-to VPN because it's been rated #1 by CNET, The Verge, and countless others, and I get why. It's so easy to use. Find out how you can get 4 extra months by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/newrockstars. Now, when Major Hanlon meets his team, Airman Second Class Masters refuses to salute. I'm assuming that we're going to find out he's part of the Legion of White Decency.
I'll get you next time, brother.
General Shaw is played by James Remar, who plays Dexter's dad in the Dexter series and recently played Secretary of War Stimson in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, the secretary who famously removed Kyoto from the list of targets because he and his wife honeymooned there. Now, earlier we saw that Phil had a Tom Corbett Space Cadet wristwatch, and now one of those comics is on his desk as Teddy studies, but also more importantly, I believe that figurine is a turtle. Again, Maturin making a cameo. And I believe we saw a Lego version of Maturin in the other It films. There's a poster for the Creature from the Black Lagoon on his wall, along with a poster for the 1956 Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Actually, in the novel, when Pennywise is chasing Eddie at one moment, he takes the form of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. We see that Phil made a drawing of a comic book these kids are working on together, showing an army soldier getting ripped apart by an alien. This will be what happens to Phil at the end of the episode. Teddy brings up Maddie and how Maddie's mom had to pay them in candy to come to his birthday, and I don't know if they even did that. Meanwhile, Lily frowns into her bathroom mirror, but when the camera turns to show her reflection, she's already pulling her hair back and smiling, making her look like two completely different people. Actually, Bev Marsh has a similar moment in the miniseries series. But you'll notice when Lily holds her hair up, I think you can see like a red orb-shaped, maybe even a red balloon floating in the background of her reflection. As she burns herself on the too hot bathwater, we see her charm bracelet with, hey, another Maturin the Turtle reference. Lily recalls the night she got this charm when she was hanging out with Maddie on the viewing deck of the Derry standpipe. I like how Maddie takes a Lone Ranger action figure who's basically Dr. Strangeloving on a soda bottle and tosses it. The turtle and the rocket ship charms are figurines from Cracker Jack boxes. Lily tells a story about how her dad worked at the jarring plant and how he went back in to get a mood ring that she left behind and then stopped to go into the machinery to fix some jam, but the foreman didn't know he was in that machinery and turned it back on, turning her dad into pickles. Not exactly what happened, but you know, smash, 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 smash. Actually, the death sounds a lot like something from Stephen King's story, The Mangler. And then fireworks go off, making this New Year's Day, 1962. Lily references the patty cakes. That's the gang of the snobby girls who follow Patty around. Maddie leans in for a kiss, but Lily leans away. This rejection, followed by the beating that this kid probably got from his dad that night, were the inciting incidents that led to Maddie running away 3 nights later. Lily's mom is disappointed that Lily doesn't want to come with her to visit her father's grave, probably just because it's a jar of Vlasics. But Lily's mom points out that she's not the only person to have something bad happen to them. Indeed, everyone in Derry has had something horribly violent happen to a loved one. Lily hears Maddie reciting the lyrics to Trouble from the Music Man Down in the Drain. Since Pennywise lives in the sewers, as we saw in It, hearing voices from the drainage pipes and bathrooms is just a common way he haunts people. Lily sees Maddie's bloody fingers poking out from the pipe. This visual is a reference to the short story King wrote called The Moving Finger, about a finger coming out of someone's bathroom drain. But yes, we're also reminded of the drain horror that Bev had to go through in It. Lily tells Marge about this the next day, and they rush into the bathroom, and there's a poster for a magic show by Melvin the Magnificent. I thought maybe a nod to Dick Halloran actor Melvin Van Peebles, and the character at least is magnificent in the way that he can use the shine. Inside the bathroom stall, we see Alvin Marsh in a heart. Alvin Marsh is the abusive father of Beverly Marsh in It. This could have been written by Bev's mom, Elfrida. We learned that Leroy served in Korea and flew a B-29 through Soviet anti-aircraft fire and didn't make it back fully in one piece, according to Leroy, who's got some unknown injury that we'll learn more about. But yes, I assume to even survive, he probably used the shine. Leroy mentions he had a family farm where he learned to fly with a crop duster. This is probably the same Hanlon family farm that Mike's parents, Will and Jessica, will pass down to him in It. Teddy dines with his devout Jewish family and asks his father if what he thinks happened to Maddie could be possible, and his father just goes even further, saying that his grandparents, just his grandparents, that's how recent all this shit was, escaped Buchenwald, which was a Nazi concentration camp in Weimar, Germany, and that the skin of Jewish prisoners was used to make lampshades. God. So this comes from a museum that was constructed on the site of Buchenwald, and in 1954 there was an exhibition with a small bedside lamp by Desk 52 with a display labeled lampshade made of human skin. Now there was no verification of whether this was authentic, and in 1992 a forensic study at the time said that they couldn't confirm it, so that part of the exhibit was removed. But then more recently in 2023 further microscopic examination suggested that it was indeed human skin. This actually happened, and it is horrifying. His father snatches a comic book. This is The Flash number 123 from September 1961. This is considered one of the earliest comics to introduce the multiverse, as it's when Barry Allen disappears and reappears in the world of Jay Garrick. Andy Muschietti, of course, directed the 2023 movie The Flash that all of you loved. After dinner, Teddy reads another DC comic, Detective Comics number 298 from December 1961. This was the first appearance of Clayface, and the first ever Clayface film will be the first live-action film set in the DC universe Gotham City, and Andy Muschietti is the director still attached to the DCU Batman movie The Brave and the Bold. At the premiere event for this It Welcome to Derry series last week, Andy and Barbara teased that an update about this Batman movie will be coming in a few months. It's hard to not see these references as nods to Andy's next big Batman project. On the day of this episode's premiere, James Gunn also got in on this, sharing on Threads this same comic book cover of Batman fighting Clayface, probably knowing that this was coming. Teddy's lamp keeps switching off, and the third time he switches it back on, even before it illuminates, you can see in the darkness that it already has a texture of the lampshade that's lumpier and covered in hair. Oh, it's the skin of those other poor victims of the Holocaust whose mouths were sewn shut here as they are screaming in muffled screams. Teddy kicks over the lamp, and I just love the detail of the flickering light getting warmer and warmer on the furniture. Normally in horror tropes, it's like an approaching shadow coming around the corner that's the source of the fear, but here it's light, something that's supposed to be good. The skin lamp rolls toward him and the mouth tears open and screams, and it sounds like it's Teddy's voice screaming back at him. Another example of the entity using a real social or historical fear of a person and manifesting it in the grossest physical form. Teddy's brother says,
Can't believe we're related.
Yeah, this future rabbi is probably gonna be thinking the same thing about his own son, Stanley, who's gonna have similar panic attacks that his uncle did. A drone shot of the town shows the Jade of the Orient restaurant, the Arrowhead Hotel. Based on trailer shots, I think this might be a business owned by the Native American family in the show. Could also be connected to Project Arrowhead in the Mist. We also see Nan's Luncheonette. King actually mentioned this as existing in Derry across from Aladdin's, but the location is also in the town of Castle Rock and Needful Things. There's also Quality Meats, a butcher shop in Derry that showed up in It. We see a sign for the Bangor chewing tobacco from J.G. Gillespie and Company, a nod to Jeremy Gillespie, the first assistant art director on the series. There's also a sign for Melvin's Pickles, maybe another nod to Melvin Van Peebles, or maybe there's some other pickle jar company that Lily's dad is floating around in. Now, Lily tells the others that she spent some time in Juniper Hill. That's an asylum in Maine in King's novels. And It, the sadistic bully Henry Bowers, ends up spending some time there when he's framed for all the murders. They go to the Derry Public Library, the same library where Ben researches the town history in It. Phil's little sister Susie joins them as they go through microfilm slides. Kind of like Lucas's little sister Erica in Stranger Things, the producers of the show are smartly playing into the tropes of how these kinds of kids mystery gangs from supernatural horror shows like this, making us think that this is gonna be the crew we're gonna be sticking around with, just to violently subvert it in the final minutes. I love it. On the newspaper page about Matt's disappearance, there is a headline about US steel prices going up, and on the left, another shout out to Jeremy Gillespie. They find Ronnie, who shoos them away, but Ronnie claims to have also heard the voices singing from the pipes beneath the Capitol Theater, laughing, calling her name. Leroy reads a newspaper with headlines about that Paul Bunyan statue being built, the one that's gonna terrify Richie later on. Other headlines, Reds receive final end treaty proposal. Again, I think it's setting up the Cuban Missile Crisis that this show might be headed toward. And then Derry Man killed in car crash. I assume it's gonna come back. Pennywise is probably involved. Also, Senate unanimously approves $100 million loan to United Nations. Leroy looks at a photo of his wife and son. I'm assuming the son will be Will, Mike's dad. What follows is, I gotta say, kind of a dumb scene that seems to be designed to set up General Shaw and others from the classified project testing Leroy's loyalty to see if he would spill details about the B-52, and he clearly passed this loyalty test. It just kind of sounded like James Remar's voice under that mask. The way it ends with all these masked dudes just getting overpowered by Leroy and Polly, and they get scared off despite them having the gun, without Leroy or Polly chasing them down and just kind of shrugging all this off. It's just a weirdly underwritten scene and an otherwise very well written pilot episode. The kids return to the Capitol Theater, where now playing is the 1962 film The Wild Westerners, and on the marquee is The Devil at 4 O'Clock. Ronnie loads up the film reel from the Trouble part of The Music Man. Teddy, Lily, and Phil all express regret at not being better friends to Maddie, and while they all claim to not be crying, when the screen lights up, there are tears on all their faces. As Harold Hill dances around the townsfolk of the scene, we see Maddie standing among them holding the mutant baby, and if you look closely around Maddie, behind him are the 4 members of the family in the car in the opening scene. Pennywise often does appear in print media and projected film reels in the It films, specifically in the 2017 movie when he takes over the projector slide and pops out of the kids, and since he's being projected large on the surface, he appears giant size when he attacks them. The same logic will apply in this scene. As the kids try to call out to Maddie, he steps forward and the other townsfolk slow down, draped in shadow, because this isn't Maddie, it's Pennywise taking Maddie's form. He shames them for not being there for Maddie, and when he raises his head, he does that classic tilted Stanley Kubrick face of madness, and then his smile warps into the buck-toothed grin of Pennywise. He throws the mutant baby out of the screen, and now, due to the logic of screen projection, it's now 7 feet tall. It's one wing flapping like mad to keep it airborne. Actually, in the Inside the Episode promo, you can see how they made this giant baby head that Machete wore while talking him through the scene. And then for the other shots of the mutant baby flying, they put a baby head on the end of a stick and shouted, "Baby, baby, baby," when it swooped down.
Baby!
The giant mutant baby drags Phil up into the air and rips him to pieces, spraying Lily with his blood. We see Phil's face smack against the projectionist window. The blood that smears on that window, plus the melting celluloid, causes this whole room to be lit red orange. It's a very cool effect. Then we see 2 kids, which must be poor Susie and poor Teddy, climbing over the rose. The mutant baby tackles Teddy, killing him. Susie hides under the rose, and Lily reaches for her, but the mutant baby finds them and eats the rest of poor Susie except her hand, still clutched onto Lily. An innocent little kid losing a hand or an arm, just like poor Georgie in the sewer in It. Ronnie bravely runs downstairs with a hammer, gets Lily out of there, and uses that hammer to hold the door shut. And Lily, upon finding Susie's hand, screams us out of this episode. Showrunner Jason Fuchs told TV Guide that the original draft of this pilot ended differently. He said that in the original scripted version, Lily actually lost her hand, but the other kids made it through. And then it was producer Brad who came in and sat down and said, "I think you should kill them all." And my first reaction was horror, because I love these characters. I created these characters. characters. And my second reaction was, I think based on my first reaction, we have to do this. There's no other way to achieve what we're trying to achieve creatively but to do this. I really like this first episode. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Marisa Miranda, for supporting us at the executive producer level. Follow me at Voss and subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.